We're going to get our SSH Lab started now, and we're going to reference back to that checklist that I showed you during the lecture part of this section. And the only thing I've done here, I have telnetted to the router we're going to put SSH on. The only commands that I've put on are telnet related and a couple of lab commands, nothing to do with SSH yet. And once we're done, we'll take the telnet commands off and we'll actually open an SSH session, make sure everything's working. So let's go ahead and go back to that checklist for a moment if we can. And we've got to define a domain name with IP domain name. You've got to name the router. You can't leave it at the default. You've got to generate the keys with crypto key generate RSA. And we'll talk about those defaults when the time comes. And we've got to configure a username password combination rather than just putting a password on the VTY lines, which is an option that Telnet gives us. So let's go ahead and bring the rack back up, and we'll start by generating the keys. And notice that we will not be doing that because it says please define a host name other than router. There is a certain order in which you need to do things here, and I would just go ahead and just do the router name first because you're not going to be able to generate your keys without it. Now that we've got that done, Mr. Persnickety Router, let's get those keys generated. We have to define a domain name first. You have to do those two things because they are going to be in the crypto keys themselves. So name, I will just call it tba.com. And now finally, will we be able to generate the keys now? Yes, we can. Now it says what the name of the keys are going to be, and you'll notice it's the host name followed by the domain name. So that's why you've got to configure those things first. I know it's easy to miss in the middle of all this. There's the name for the keys. It's going to be the host name followed by the domain name. Now note that it says, choose the size of the key modulus for your general purpose keys. Choosing a modulus greater than 512 may take a few minutes. I have almost always seen this set to 1024. So we're not going to accept the default, and of course when you see a number in those brackets that means you could just hit the enter key and that would be accepted. So let's see how long this takes on this little old lab router. A few seconds, maybe 10 seconds. That can change, so it's something to be aware of. So now looking at our checklist, what have we done so far? In the correct order, we have named the router, and then we defined the domain name, and then we generated the keys. So now we have to create that username password combination. So we'll do that now with the username password command. And remember, privilege goes in the center of all of this. And that's it. Now we're going to go to the VTY lines. And I'm going to take, actually I'm not going to take that off because I don't want to cut my, I don't know if that would do it or not. So let's go with login local here. That's what we need under there. And anything else? We've got our privilege level. We've got login local. And I'm going to take off those passwords. Then we're going to do a quick save here. Go down to show run. But let's quickly check that VTY line config. Because anytime that I start putting extra commands on something like that, where I've already got some before, say some more login commands on the VTY lines when I already had some, I just want to do what I like to call an ocular scan, which means I like to look at it. And let's go ahead. Yeah, I see what happened. Okay, so let's try that again. We're going to take the privilege level command off and then do a login local. And then we'll be good to go. Because when I did no login, it took the login local off as well. Got to be careful with that. I just knew my spider sense was definitely going off. I knew something was wrong. And there we go. The VTY lines have the login local command. Here's our username privilege password command. Our domain name, look up our domain name, and that's about it. So let's try to open up an SSH session now, and actually what I'm going to use is PuTTY. And you can use any SSH client you want to, and there are legal warnings here with PuTTY about certain countries where encryption is outlawed, etc. So this is my time to tell you that I'm not taking responsibility for nothing. You're on your own with this, but there are certain countries you can't use it in. So let's go ahead. I've already downloaded it. And I'm going to tell it OK. When it comes up, I know this is very small. I wish this was larger or I could zoom into it. But I'm just going to leave it at SSH. And the only thing I'm going to do here, if you click on Appearance and click Change, you go away from the 10-point font, which I am not a fan of. So I'm going to make that 20. And I'm going to go back to the session, and I'm going to connect to 10.1.1.2. And I've got SSH radio button already there, so let's hit OK. And you get a potential security breach. This is OK for right here. And then you get login as. And then just enter your username, password. And it works. So there you are. You're at the CCP prompt. And if you do a show SSH, you get a little message here, you know, what the connections are, in, out, and even what the username is. And there are some options there, as you would expect. VTY, what do we get there? What's it going to ask for? The lines? Yeah, the SSH connection number. We're not going to get into all of that because I really just want to show you the fundamentals here. But really, that's all there is to it. The commands that you saw here, I would know cold. The ones we used on the router, the ones you saw on the list, I would imagine they're going to come up on your exam in some form or another. And that really about does it for the SSH Lab. So we're going to disconnect from here, and I'll see you on the next video.